Now, the last thing I have here is the reverse mortgage counseling certificate sample. I say sample because, quite frankly, I took someone's certificate and made some changes to delete off everything that was an identifying number. I did not want to have their full certificate number up here. I took their names out so that their names aren't on the certificate. I wanted to make it as generic as possible. The reason I made this certificate up was to give you an idea of what these certificates should look like. Now, when I put this particular certificate in white paper because it's easier for my particular video, normally I would print these off on colored paper. Granted, I have found light colored papers such as yellow, light pink, light green to be very good because they can both fax and be copied. I like to have the colored paper because I want to make sure that as it goes forward, it's easy to find. Because you saw how much white paper I went through here, and you've seen how much additional white paper is out there. If I keep sending people with more and more white paper, they're going to lose their certificate. Having colored paper makes it easy to find. I tend to recommend other counseling agencies do that. Now, a couple things that are kind of important. I usually get to this when I get to the certificate, and I like to point out here that there are no tax consequences to a reverse mortgage. Reverse mortgages, or HECMs in particular, are loans. Again, I come back to you own your own house. This is a mortgage. It is a loan. It is money that you are borrowing from your own property. So as such, as a loan, you will not be able to, or you're not going to have to claim the income here as taxable income. However, I will also note on the flip side, you will not be able to get a 1099 INT anymore if you currently have a mortgage. Because you're not required to pay the interest on the mortgage insurance or are not paying it until the case is done, they're not going to issue you a 1099 INT to take that interest off your taxes. If you've been relying on that, this is something you want to think about when you do a reverse mortgage. Now, I will also tell people one of the questions that's often asked is the person working with a financial advisor? This is not to say that any HUD counselor wants to discourage you from working with a financial advisor. To be honest, I actually encourage many people to work with them. But you also want to look at why that financial advisor is talking about a HECM. Are they telling you you have to take the HECM so that you can use those proceeds for something else? That can be a bad choice. Are they telling you you have to take the HECM to use the proceeds to buy, for example, an annuity, which may not produce as much money as the HECM would on its own? Or are they telling you you need to take a HECM because you're running out of money and you have no other way to keep your house and continue to live where you're living? Again, financial advisors who are doing it correctly don't tell you you have to take a HECM. They may tell you you want to take a HECM, but they won't tell you you have to take a HECM. This is something you want to consider. Because if someone's telling you you have to take this loan, you need to back up and think of, do I want to take this loan, not are they wanting me to? Now, the certificate itself, all of these certificates when they're printed are good for 6 months, or 180 days from the date. I don't have a date on here, but if I did, for example, if the date were the 15th, then chances were it would be February 15th to August 14th. It's 180 days. The certificate expires on August 14th, 2018, if that was the case. Once the certificate's expired, you would have to get it again to be able to close your loan. Please plan ahead. Don't run out and get counseling for your loan if, for example, you have a condo and they're not FHA approved. Get the FHA approval first, then go out and get the certificate for your to close. Because your reverse mortgage lender can't take an application without the certificate, but they can certainly help you get your FHA information for your condo to get it FHA certified. Similarly, along those same lines, because there is a limit, many counseling agencies, if you cross that limit, you will have to pay them to get a new counseling certificate. The agency I worked for had a very liberal attitude towards these. We would often allow a person to get if they took their certificate with us, we would give them a certain period of time where we'd reissue that certificate for free. Now, the reason we did that, and the reason I'm not telling you the exact time, is because, quite frankly, we changed this over time, and it may not be the same when you hear this. But we would give that person time because we want them to have time to think about it, perhaps more than 6 months. We wanted to make sure that situations that were beyond their control, we wouldn't charge them again to do the counseling. But that's because the agency I worked for was looking at it from a different perspective. Every agency is different, every counseling agency is different. Don't get too caught up in it. If you have to pay, plan ahead, it's something you'll have to do. Now, in this particular person paid a sum of $175 because when I worked at Community Service Network, that was what we charged, was $175. It was based on the amount of time I spent with the person, what it cost us to do the program, and how to keep everything running. Similarly, you will note that I spent 120 minutes with this particular person. For my sessions, my averages were somewhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours for most people. Every counselor is going to be different. But I'm going to tell you, you want to avoid perfunctory counseling. If someone's only counseling for you for 15 minutes to half an hour, something's wrong. You need to go back and find out what and talk to someone for more time. This is, as you could tell, sitting here with me, this is a lot of material to go over, and I'm just explaining paper. I'm not actually giving you a counseling session. So again, you want to look into that and find out, why aren't you getting enough time? You may even want to talk to HUD about why you didn't get enough time. Now, I will also point out, when it comes to this time, a counseling session's counseling. It involves more of a back and forth. It involves questions from you, answers from the counselor, and it also involves some questions from the counselor and answers from you. It's a mutual back and forth. What I did here again was I explained a bunch of papers. This is not a counseling session. One of the things I will point out, in all the years I did this, again, almost 12 years, the shortest counseling session I had, the absolute shortest, was 40 minutes. And that 40-minute counseling session was with someone who had been a counselor, a salesman, and an underwriter of reverse mortgages. They knew almost as much about this as I did. And we sat there, we talked about a lot of things, and there were still some things I told them that they didn't know. And there were some things that they told me that I didn't know. But that was a 40-minute session for someone who is expert in these. The reality is, no matter how much time you spend with them, you're probably not, unless you have that same designation, you're probably not going to know as much as that person did. And they still spent 40 minutes with me. So again, when you think about this and you think about how much time it takes, you want it to take as long as it takes. Don't try to force it. Don't try to put yourself in a time limit. Don't use this video series in place of an actual session. You want to sit down with them and go over it line by line. And the reason I say that, things change. Where they are right now, when I issued this certificate in February of 2018, may not be the same as when it's going to be even March of 2018 or April or 2019. The watchword of this industry is change. It has not stayed the same. Just like the watchword for the entire mortgage industry is change. Things continue to change. Don't get locked in.